Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are looking at a place that, on paper, just seems like a total contradiction.
Right.
We're talking about Vanuatu, a tiny Pacific island nation, with an economy smaller than a lot of American suburbs.
And yet somehow it's become this absolutely critical player in the global iGaming licensing world.
Exactly. So the question we're really trying to tackle today, and it's a big one for any global operator, is this. Is Vanuatu a hidden gem? A place with a real business advantage?
Or is it just a beautifully packaged legal risk?
That's the core of it.
Ah.
So before we jump in, maybe you can just remind everyone who we are and what we're trying to do with these deep dives.
Of course, yeah. We're the Gambling Databases research team. And our whole mission really is to deliver these in-depth analyses of the global iGaming landscape. We go country by country.
Looking at everything from local regulations, taxation, what the player experience is like.
The works. We cover operator conditions, emerging trends. Basically, our goal is to give you a clear, data-driven understanding of how the gambling industry actually functions inside each market.
And what makes it unique?
Precisely. And for today, the mission is to decode Vanuatu's strategy. We've gone through a comprehensive market analysis to figure out what operators are really buying when they get a license there.
So, is it a place to find actual players? Or is it just a launch pad to operate somewhere else?
That's the million-dollar question.
Okay, let's just dive right into the numbers that, frankly, shocked us. Our internal data gives Vanuatu an operator ease score of 9.2 out of 10.
A 9.2, that's nearly a perfect score.
It's incredible. So what's the legal foundation that makes it so accessible?
Well, what's fascinating is that the foundation is actually pretty robust, even if the place itself is small. Vanuatu has a fully regulated environment.
This isn't some Wild West situation.
Not at all. It's all governed by the Interactive Gaming Act of 2000, and it's overseen by the Vanuatu Gaming Authority, or VGA. They picked a transparent, risk-based approach really early on.
And that gives it a level of legal certainty.
Exactly, a certainty that a lot of its offshore competitors just don't have.
Certainty is huge. But I think for operators looking to get moving, it's the speed and the cost that really stand out. What are like the three main pillars that get it to that stellar 9.2 rating?
Okay, so pillar number one is pure speed to market. We've tracked this. And if an applicant has all their paperwork in order, the whole process averages just 6 to 8 weeks for a decision.
6 to 8 weeks. That's unheard of.
It's almost unmatched globally. If you're an operator and you need to sign game providers, get your B2B contracts going immediately, Vanuatu is pretty much the fastest route to a valid license.
When you compare that to, say, a year or more of red tape in some European markets, it's just no contest.
Right. Then you have pillar two, which is maybe the biggest draw for anyone thinking long-term. It's this combination of low cost and extreme longevity.
Great, break that down for us.
The application fee is only 5,000 euros. The annual renewal is just 10,000 euros. But here's the real game changer. The license term is 15 years.
15, wow. That's an eternity in this business.
It is.
Doesn't a term that long signal to some people that maybe they're a bit desperate for foreign cash, that maybe oversight could get compromised down the line?
That's a valid strategic concern for sure. But from the operator side, it just signals stability. With a 15-year term, you can spread out your initial setup costs over a much longer period.
Right, compared to a typical 2 or maybe 5-year license.
Exactly. So it significantly cuts down on your long-term regulatory risk, or at least the risk of the local authorities suddenly changing the rules on you.
All right, let's hit pillar 3. The money, the financial incentive. This is where their strategy gets really aggressive.
Oh, it does. This is what some people would call tax dumping. The gross gaming revenue, the GGR.
So that's the money the operator keeps after paying out winnings.
Correct. That GGR is taxed at a maximum rate of 2.5%.
2.5%.
And to make it even better, there is no additional corporate income tax on that gambling revenue. So an operator's total tax burden is effectively just that tiny 2.5%. It's built to give a competitive edge that Tier 1 jurisdictions just can't match.
Okay, so we've got it. Vanuatu is an operator's paradise from a regulatory and tax standpoint. A near-perfect 9.2.
That's the story so far.
But, and this is a huge but, this is where the whole narrative just fractures. Despite that incredible ease of operation, our analysis gives Vanuatu an overall market attractiveness score of just 4.0 out of 10.
Moderate, bordering on poor.
That is a massive gap. What explains that contradiction?
And this brings up the most important strategic question for you to ask yourself. Why would you get a license in a country that offers you almost no commercial return?
Because the players aren't there.
The players are not there. The simple reality is that Vanuatu is not a viable B2C target market for any major operator. That local consumer deficit is the critical risk that drags that score all the way down to a 4.0.
Okay, let's break down the data there. Just how small is the addressable market?
It is tiny. The total population, based on 2025 estimates, is only around 335,000 people.
And their spending power.
It's extremely low. GDP per capita is about 4,000 US dollars. We estimate the average revenue per user, the ARPU, is only between, say, $400, $600 a year.
So just to put that in perspective, if a major operator with, I don't know, $100 million marketing budget decided to throw everything at Vanuatu, what's their absolute ceiling?
Well, our projections show the entire market's GGR for 2025 is probably only going to be between 50 and 70 million US dollars for the whole country.
A big operator might spend that on marketing in a single quarter.
Exactly. For global players, the local market is statistically irrelevant. There's just no business case to set up in Vanuatu and expect to make money from local players.
And it's not just about income, right? The analysis pointed to some pretty big infrastructure challenges that physically stop players from getting online.
Absolutely. The digital divide is a massive barrier. Internet penetration is low, barely hitting somewhere between 45 and 55% of the population.
So almost half the country is just offline.
They're fundamentally disconnected.
So what does that actually mean for an operator trying to deliver a modern experience? Does that mean no live casino, things like that?
Precisely. Mobile adoption is high, about 70% smartphone penetration, but reliable, fast broadband is really only in the capital, Port Vila, and maybe one or two other towns.
And the rest of the islands.
Rural areas across the archipelago are dealing with patchy, unreliable connections. So operators have to focus on really lightweight mobile apps, low bandwidth games, streaming heavy live dealer games or those complex greedy slots. It's just not technically or economically feasible for a huge chunk of the potential audience.
So the low player access score isn't about regulation, it's about geology and infrastructure.
That's right. I mean, 4G and 5G are rolling out, but the speed issues are real. Focusing on the local B2C market would mean making huge operational compromises.
Let's shift a bit to the operational side of things. What do you actually have to do to be there?
Right, so you can't just be a P.O. box. Foreign companies have to set up a locally registered entity. You need a physical address in Vanuatu that's non-negotiable for the regulators.
Which seems fair enough. A way to ensure some accountability, even if you're targeting other countries.
It is, and it connects to the compliance rules. You don't need your whole staff living there, but you absolutely must have local compliance representatives.
And their job is?
They're responsible for making sure you follow the AML Act of 2014. That means robust, know your customer, or KYC, procedures, and responsible gambling measures, like self-exclusion tools and deposit limits.
So they demand a high standard of player protection, even if those players are overseas.
They do.
Now, setting up in a Pacific Island jurisdiction, that has to come with some friction with the big international financial system. I'm thinking about banking, payments, the stuff that can be a stealth cost.
This is a massive headache for operators. The big international Tier 1 banks, the ones that handle huge settlement volumes, they often classify Pacific Island jurisdictions as high risk.
Why is that?
It's often a perception of regulatory softness, even if the local AML rules are actually quite strict on paper.
So what happens when an operator based in Vanuatu tries to settle, say, a multi-million-dollar cross-border transaction?
They run into a wall. That high-risk classification can get their merchant accounts declined, or they'll face much higher processing fees, and settlements are slow and complicated.
So a $5 million payout could get flagged.
It could get flagged, delayed, subjected to intense scrutiny. And all of that adds logistical cost and time that starts to eat away at those tax benefits.
And what about the reputation of the license itself? If I get a Vanuatu license, what does the rest of the world think of it?
It's unequivocally considered Tier 2 or Tier 3.
Meaning?
Meaning it's a necessary evil for some, but it has little to no legal weight or advertising rights in strictly regulated markets. If you try to advertise a Vanuatu licensed site in the UK, the US, Germany, you'll face immediate legal action from their local regulators. It's purely an offshore license for gray markets.
And we noted some uncertainty around how they're handling crypto.
Yes. So Vanuatu wants to seem very forward-thinking, very crypto-friendly, but right now, using crypto in gaming, there still carries some legislative risk. There's a pending bill, the Virtual Asset Service Provider Bill VASP expected in 2025?
And that's meant to regulate it all.
Exactly. But until that bill passes and the rules are stable, operators who rely heavily on crypto are kind of working in a temporary gray area. It just adds another little layer of uncertainty.
So let's pull all this together, synthesize the findings. What is the actual fundamental strategic use of a Vanuatu license?
When you put the low tax, the fast licensing, and the tiny market all together, it points to one very clear strategy.
Which is
The economics are excellent only if you're using Vanuatu as a corporate base to target other unregulated or gray jurisdictions.
a classic launchpad operation. And which parts of the world are we talking about here? Where can you realistically operate with a Tier 2 license like this?
Primarily high growth but under-regulated areas. So think parts of Asia, certain regions in Latin America, and emerging markets across Africa.
Places where a Tier 1 license isn't required.
It's not necessary, but operators still need a valid registered license to get their game provider deals and banking partners sorted. A Vanuatu license is a very inexpensive key to open the doors to those global gray markets.
Okay, so based on all this, we can define the ideal target audience for this jurisdiction. Who should be looking at Vanuatu and who should absolutely run away?
Right. You should strongly consider it if you're a startup operator with limited capital. You need a legal license for less than 100 grand in upfront costs.
And if you're targeting those gray markets?
Solely targeting those gray markets. Or if you're looking for a crypto-friendly environment once that VASP regulation stabilizes. All while getting that amazing 2.5% tax rate.
And you must absolutely avoid it if you have any hope of finding local players.
Because the market is commercially worthless. But there's one more critical warning, and it's about the legal risk.
Okay.
This is the final non-negotiable point for any operator's directors to understand. Vanuatu might be geographically remote, but it is very closely aligned with the Commonwealth.
And crucially.
Crucially, it has close legal and political ties, including active extradition cooperation with 3 major powers: Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom.
That changes the risk calculation completely for a gray market operator.
It really does. This is not some impenetrable jurisdictional shield. If you are an operator illegally targeting players in Australia or New Zealand from a base in Vanuatu, you face genuine legal peril.
You're not beyond their reach.
Not at all. The risk of extradition, of international asset seizure, it's high, especially when you're breaking laws in those specific Commonwealth nations. That fact has to cool any excitement you get from that 9.2 E-score.
Which brings us to the final verdict. We've laid it all out. Vanuatu is a masterclass in regulatory efficiency, that's the 9.2, but the local market is a 4.0.
A huge gap.
So the key takeaway for you, the listener, is clear. Vanuatu offers an exceptional, cost-effective way to get a license quickly, but it is commercially worthless as a B2C consumer market.
Use it as a launch pad for the rest of the world.
But respect the legal ties it keeps with those Tier 1 nations.
And that leads to the final thought we want to leave you with to mull over, given the increasing global scrutiny on these Tier 2 and Tier 3 licenses.
Which is coming from bodies like the OECD and FATF, especially about aggressive tax policies.
Exactly. So how long can Vanuatu realistically maintain its 2.5% GGR tax dumping strategy before that international financial pressure forces them to make compliance changes? Changes that could erode its biggest competitive advantage. The ground is always shifting.
A vital question. The global regulatory goalposts never stay still for long. For the full text of this in-depth Vanuatu report and other country analyses from the Gambling Databases research team, please visit our website at gamblingdatabases.com.